welcome back to Making Video Your Business. Today I'm joined by Sharon, who's really local to us. She's based at Grantham Museum. Sharon, thanks so much for giving us your time today. I wanted to chat to you about visuals, because this is what the podcast is about, and in the context of history and preserving I guess the history of not just Grantham but also some of our national history. Working in museums, how important has visual content become as part of exhibits and displays?
I think there's a lot of issues around how you present them. For a start, I think that's the big thing, and I think that's what a lot of people struggle with. You can walk into a museum when you're actually physically there. It's absolutely fantastic. You can immerse yourself in that content. It gives you a feeling back, if that makes sense. It's really, really difficult to actually present it in a visual way if you don't know what you're doing. And I think that's what a lot of places really, really struggle with. So for me, it's about making sure that, first of all, you get a really good photographer on board. You need somebody that's got a really good eye for which angle they're coming from, because otherwise, if you just do it front on, you run the risk of just having something that looks really, really flat. It doesn't pull people in. So that can be really, really dull. Video content. For me, it's all about video, especially if you are promoting it on social media. That is so important. And I think that a lot of people don't really get that yet, although I would expect them to be able to get that. Yeah, I don't want it to sound derogatory to anybody, but a lot of people just don't have that eye for it. So it's really worth investing time in a local company that can help you to actually understand what you should be doing, how you should be looking at it. You want people online to have the same experience, or as close to the same experience as they would do if they were actually physically there. And I think video and visual content as a thing has become a lot more important these days, because we need to think about accessibility as well. Not everybody can physically get down to a museum, or it might be an exhibition that's so far away they can't get to it. It's too expensive, or it's just too difficult for them to get there on the train. You look at people like the Savoy Cinema that do the exhibition on screen things. That's absolutely fantastic. It really gives you an opportunity to get in there to see what it would actually be like without paying 35 quid to actually get down there, then another 50 quid to get into the place in the first place. And you may be paying £7.50 at the cinema. And that makes a lot of sense. The visual content is really, really key. But as I say, it's coming back to getting the right people involved. You don't want to be putting yourself out there with something that's just really, really shoddy and it's just not doing it. You really need to showcase whatever that piece is, and that's really, really important.
So how are you leveraging visual content at the museum that you work at currently? You know, what sort of video content and visual content are you using right now?
We're generally using photographs because that works best for us. We've got quite a small space, so it's not easy for us to actually create that kind of content that is really going to pull people in, if that makes sense. But what we are looking at the moment, we have recently had a volunteer recruitment drive. We've got some young volunteers that are actually studying video and film.
Yeah.
Which is a really, really good thing. It's what you need.
Brilliant.
And if we can pull these people in as well and get them to actually have a think about, just really, really creatively go into the museum and have a look around. What catches their eye?
Yeah.
How do they think they would like to see it? Especially from a younger person's perspective, because museums, a lot of people think, oh, fuddy-duddy stuff, not going to go into a museum. It's just for old people.
Yeah.
Of course it isn't. But if you can have a younger person's view of it, I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, of course.
And I think the content that comes out of that could be really compelling as well, because they will look at it a lot differently than somebody that I would, or maybe somebody that's been volunteering at the museum for 20 years.
Yeah.
It is going to be a different
different perspective. What is your background generally? Where have you come from? How have you spent your career so far?
Oh, well, long story, long time. So I started out in digital very early. That was one of my main focuses when I was still at secondary school.
Yeah.
I moved on to I did YTS. Some people still remember
YTS,
YTS.
yeah.
I moved on to that, expanded my skills, not just looking at office and business procedures, but just looking generally at, what could I be doing? Because at that time there wasn't really much that I could have been doing in a digital space,
Yeah.
apart from data entry. That was pretty much all it was. But then, of course, the internet happened.
Yeah.
That was amazing for me.
Yeah, I am old enough. I know I don't look it to remember pre-internet.
I still remember I was still programming on things like Amiga 500s at that time. And then when the internet started, I got my first PC, and it was like, oh my God, what can I do with this? Oh, what is that?
Yeah.
What is that even? But Windows 95, that was on my first PC. And it was really a case of, right, what do I do with it now? And then I decided, do you know what? I'm just going to start my own magazine.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was really into music at the time. I used to go and see bands every week.
Yeah.
And it was fabulous. And I thought, you know, I can really do something with this. So I started my own magazine, got in touch with record labels, with agencies, and started interviewing bands. And then I printed it all myself. I actually stapled the blooming things together myself.
Yeah.
And stood at gigs holding this magazine, hoping that somebody would buy them, and they actually sold, and it was great.
Yeah.
So I did that for a little while, and then moved on to I started my own agency.
Yeah.
Promoting bands. So I had bands on my roster that were from all different parts of the world, which was fantastic. And
can you name names? Any famous bands you had on
any
your
famous
roster?
bands? Anybody knows Behemoth? Big shout out to them because they are amazing.
Yeah.
And I worked with them for a long time. And if you do have any CDs, then you'll find my name on the back of them, because I
Nice.
did lyrics with them as well.
Nice.
But yeah, it was a fabulous time.
So when did you start working in digital media and digital space in terms of social content and actually driving forward? Because you're in charge of basically the museum in Grantham here's social side. That's a large part of your role.
Yeah.
When did you first start leveraging, I guess, social channels? Obviously, Facebook came to the UK in 2007.
Yeah.
And then obviously since then we've had the advent of Twitter, now X, Instagram, obviously, and then now it's Snapchat, and now TikTok's massive. You know, when did you start using social channels for, I guess, for marketing and PR?
Well, I started right back when it actually arrived.
Yeah.
In a previous role, it was more about email marketing.
Yes,
that
of course.
kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. Still big now.
Social media was something that people weren't really interested in. A lot of businesses were a little bit reluctant to actually get on board with it because they didn't really see the value. And previous employer was just really, no, this shouldn't be a focus. Just do what you're doing, leave that. I was adamant that this was the way to go. This was really, really something that we needed to do. So I started doing it in my spare time. I would sit in the evenings and just research what are other people doing? How could we use this for the business? Create something that's compelling for a new audience.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't about engaging an existing audience necessarily, although you can do that, of course.
Of course.
But it was more about how do we make it bigger?
Yes. Yeah.
This is something that everyone's going to be using. And I was absolutely adamant people will be using it, but the powers that be, they were just like, not really sure. But it really did take off, and we did lots and lots of experiments on different platforms, Facebook being the primary one at the time.
Yeah.
Some things worked,
Yes.
some things didn't work.
Yeah.
But it's test and learn, isn't it?
Yeah,
and that's what you have to do. Regardless of your business, you need to understand how can you use it for a start.
Yeah.
Just because you've got a Facebook profile doesn't mean you're good at Facebook.
Of course.
It really doesn't. So it's about what content do we have? How often can we post? What's that content going to look like? Is it photos? Is it videos? Is it just a simple slideshow?
Yeah, yeah.
Or, and what about the content? Is it a campaign that we're running? Do we want to go deeper? Do we want to do we want to try different types of content? And I think what a lot of people really need to get to grips with is understanding their audience. What do they actually want?
I think for me, it's really, really key. I ask every guest what their top tips would be for getting going with video content. What's your top 3 tips be?
First of all, do you have the content? Have you got something that would be compelling on video? Second thing is, can you do it? And third thing is, think of your platform. What sort of format are you going to use? Is it going to be TikTok? Is that where your audience is at? Could be. Is it going to be Reels? Do you think you need to have a video that's a little bit longer, but actually it's probably too long to stick on Facebook because people are just like, oh, and they're scrolling through. They're not necessarily going to watch a 5-minute video. However, you could just take a really, really short version, 15 seconds, and then link it to your YouTube. Put your full version on YouTube and then link them off to there. Give them more information, take them back to your website. You've got so many opportunities for those onward journeys. That's what people really, really need to think about. They need to think about what platforms they're on, where their audience is at, and how do they tailor their content for the audience. So it's not just one video. It's, okay, if we want to put it on this, and this, what's best practice on each of these platforms? It's not one size fits all.
Just finally then, why should people come and see you at Grantham Museum? What can people find there, and why is it important that people come and support you?
I think the really important thing about Grantham Museum is local people understanding that we have so much heritage. I think a lot of people, when they think of Grantham, think, oh, Margaret Thatcher. It's not just about Margaret Thatcher, although we do have a wonderful exhibition in the museum, and I would recommend anybody come and have a look.
I've seen it; it's great.
It's absolutely great. We've got the Isaac Newton exhibition as well, which is a bit interactive as well. It's got a nice little board where you've got your questions, you can pull out, you've got the answers. It's great for kids.
Have you still got the apothecary?
Yes.
Amazing.
That's still there as well, and that's lovely. I look at it all the time and think, I'd like my kitchen to look like that.
Amazing.
Because it just looks so great.
Yeah.
And also, if you come out of the museum, just go around the corner before you go into the Guildhall, you can see they've got part of the old prison there as well.
Yeah, they have, yeah.
And that's absolutely fantastic. Yeah. So you've got a little bit of a join up there as well.
Yeah.
So if you've been to the museum, you could also nip into the Guildhall as well, because they've got some really, really great stuff in there to have a look at. And the more people we can actually get into the museum, the more funds that come in. I mean, obviously, as a charity, we are reliant on donations, but we are very heavily reliant on the public coming in and visiting us, having a look around, and leaving us some pennies if they can. Every little helps. That sounds very cliche, but it really, really does. And the more money that we can get in, the more we are then able to create new exhibitions, which is really what we want.
Yeah, Sharon, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you coming in. I wish Grantham Museum every success, and I encourage people to go and support it. It's fantastic.
Yeah, please do come see us.
Thanks a million.